Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's so good to see you all and good to be here with you all this morning in worship. Welcome to First Universalist Church. And this morning, we are going to just settle in, take a deep breath in and out, a collective breath of arrival together as we get to enjoy our prelude this morning, which is an organ piece by Frank Bridge, Lento by Frank Bridge, from our fabulous music director, Brecht Tesvold. Good morning and welcome to the First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and serve the community. Whoever you are welcome here. Wherever you come from, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, you are most certainly welcome here. And whether you are living with active addiction, you are in recovery, and or someone you love lives with addiction, you are welcome here. All of you is welcome here in this sacred space. It is good to be together this morning. We acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, keepers of the Western Door and part of the Haudenosaunee people on whose ancestral lands First Universalist now stands. If you are here for the first time this morning, we especially welcome you. Thank you so much for making your way here to our virtual worshiping community. We invite everyone who is here, and especially those who are new, to pop into the chat to offer a good morning, a hello, I'm here, just as folks have been doing already. Especially if you're new, please let us know that you're new here so we can just offer you an extra greeting. For those of you here who are new also, we have a visitors form that will be pasted into the chat. Please feel free to click on that link and fill it out at your convenience so we can welcome you even beyond what we can offer here in this virtual worshiping community. Welcome, Welcome to worship at First Universalist Church. Dear ones, our opening hymn this morning is hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life. As we are entering into a worship service that explores addiction and community, certainly it feels important and appropriate to honor all that is our life. So let us join hearts and voices in singing together this morning, recognizing that even as we're singing muted in our own homes, we are creating a collective song across the city of Rochester, our country, the state of New York, and the world. So let us sing together hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kitty Forbush, and I'm your worship associate this morning. As a person in recovery from the disease of alcoholism, this community sealed the deal for me around the issue of a higher power in my life, which I'd been struggling with. I needed a spiritual home, and First Universalist gave me a platform to dive off from into the sea of me, connecting with so much of what recovery had already brought to me: unconditional love, kindness, compassion, and acceptance in a spiritual community that embraced these values already was life-changing. We can get through the hard stuff and still be happy. We can get through the hard stuff and forgive and love. We can get through the hard stuff and make our amends. We can get through the hard stuff and mourn together, sing together, and laugh together. This is community: faithful, spiritual, warm, accepting, and inclusive, here at our church. So come, let us worship together. As Reverend Lane lights our chalice in the sanctuary and we light our chalices at home, will you join me in saying our chalice lighting words written in Zoom? May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Please join me in our affirmation of faith, followed by our doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity and fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all. First Universalist is our spiritual home, our community. In community, we give and receive, and we receive and give. To give financially to our community, no matter how big or how small, to share your treasure is a privilege and is something that is never taken lightly. What we receive back is priceless. Please click the link in the chat to give online to First Universalist Church, or feel free to send a check to the church.
I've come to sing a song about hope. I'm not inspired much right now, but even so, I came up here to sing a song, so here I go. I guess I think that if I tinker long enough, one might appear. And look, it's here. One verse is done. The work's begun. I've come to sing a song about hope. In spite of everything ridiculous and sad, though I'm beyond belief, depressed, confused, and mad, well, I got dressed. I underestimated how much that would take. I didn't break until right now. I sing of hope and don't know how. So maybe I can substitute strength, because I'm strong. I'm strong enough. I got through lots of things I didn't think I could. And so did you. And so did you. And so I sing a song about hope. Though I can't guarantee there's something real behind it, I have to try and show my loved ones we can find it. And so today, when life is crazy and impossible to bear, it must be there. Fear never wins. That's what I hope. See, I said hope, the work begins. So maybe we can substitute strength, because we're strong. We're strong enough. We got through lots of things we didn't think we could. I know that's true. I know that's true. And so we sing a song about hope. Though we can't guarantee there's something real behind it, we have to try and show our loved ones we can find it. And so today, when life is crazy and impossible to bear, it must be there. Fear never wins. That's I said, hope the work begins.
Good morning, friends. Today's story is Wishes and Worries, Coping with a Parent Who Drinks Too Much Alcohol, from the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, illustrated by Lars Rudibger. This story could apply to a parent who abuses any sort of substance, and as in real life, it is hard and intense. And if this is something that's too raw or tender in your heart, feel free to turn off your volume while I have the story pictures going. I love you. We always opened family presents the night before our birthday, and last year, when my turn came, I was excited and happy. That is, until Dad stumbled his way to the couch. He could tell he'd been drinking. Dad bought you a new bicycle, Mom said. It's bright green. Let's go out and see it. I want to see it with Dad. Can't you wake him up? I miss him when he doesn't do things with us. You know he'll just be grumpy and angry, Maggie. Come on, don't be sad. What are you going to wish for when you blow out the candles on your cake? My brother Daniel whispered. Daniel is usually really quiet so that Dad doesn't have a reason to yell at him. I didn't really have to say that all I wanted was for Dad to stop drinking, because I knew we all wished that. The day of the party, Mom bustled around the kitchen. Hurry up, finish breakfast, kids. There's a lot to do before Maggie's party. I'll pick up the birthday cake, Dad offered. Mom looked as worried as I felt. Are you sure, dear? What's the matter? Do you think I'll let you down? Dad sounded hurt. Nobody said a word, but I thought about all the times he had let us down by being late, or worse, not even showing up. My stomach was in knots. We'd just finished decorating when the doorbell rang. I had invited my friends over, including Amanda. She's my favorite friend from school, but she'd never been to my house. I was too worried about what she'd think of my family. We played volleyball in the backyard, ate up all the food, and waited for the cake. It seemed like forever, but Daddy finally arrived, wearing a silly smile with ice cream cake. He walked unsteadily inside to the kitchen. We all watched as the cake slipped from his hands and fell onto Candy's head. Nobody knew what to do, except for Candy. She was busy lapping up the sticky mess. Mom yelled at Dad. Dad yelled back. Daniel hid under the table. Beth stormed out, and I was ready to cry. Then the guests started phoning their friends to pick them up early. When Amanda left, she gave me a sad little hug as she walked out the door. The next day I heard kids whispering that my dad was drunk at my party. I was so hurt and angry that the surprised look made me feel bad, and I started crying. What's going on? Said Mr. Hubble. Amanda, why don't you and the other kids go outside for recess? I thought for sure I'd get in trouble, but I didn't. People shouldn't talk behind your back, but you shouldn't knock anyone's lunch on the floor. I'm certain you know that, Maggie. Can you tell me why you're so angry? He wanted to know why I was angry? He was being really nice, and I wanted so badly to talk to someone. Could I trust him? Was he a safe person to talk to? I took a deep breath. I got so upset and embarrassed at my birthday party. My friends saw everything, and now they're telling people my dad was drunk. My parents had a big fight. Everything is such a mess. I talked and talked. Mr. Hubble said, Maybe your dad does drink too much alcohol, Maggie. Some people who drink too much can't stop, and they end up saying and doing things that hurt the people they love. Sometimes the people who get hurt don't like to talk about it. Does it help now that you've told me? I nodded and tried not to cry. I think it might help if you talk to Miss Yee. Lots of kids do. She's a great school counselor. There are tons of families like yours. All the way home, I thought about what Mr. Hubble said. I was scared to tell Mom. What if she was mad that I told our family secrets to my teacher? Mom had enough to worry about. But she surprised me. Maggie, I can tell you're upset about Dad's drinking and what happened at the party. You should know we both love all three of you, and we're trying to make things better. Would it be okay if I could talk to the school counselor, Mom? I think that's a good thing to do. I'm really proud of you, Maggie. The next day I went to see Miss Yee. I asked her the question that troubled me most. Is it my fault that Dad drinks too much? You didn't cause this problem, Maggie, she said, and it's not your problem to fix. Sometimes you and your brother and sister may feel upset by what's going on at home. It's important to talk to an adult that you trust about your thoughts and feelings. I thought for a moment, like my grandma or my neighbor Melba. I can go to her house when things are bad at home. Those are fine ideas, Maggie. You can also call a kids' helpline. A couple of days later, we were having breakfast. Dad cleared his throat. We've been going to see Dr. Gupta. She's helping me with my drinking problem. Mom and I are going to work on things together. Dr. Gupta explained that you kids shouldn't blame yourself for my bad decisions. She also helped me to find a counselor for more help. Beth, Daniel, and I looked at each other. Did this mean things would get better around our house? The months passed, and Dad pretty much stopped drinking. He started to spend more time with Beth, Daniel, and me. He even went to my basketball games with the rest of my family. It felt great to see him clapping for me. One day as we walked home from the park, he said, Maggie, I'm really starting to feel better about myself. I didn't even realize my drinking was a problem until your party. Now I know it affects the whole family. I'm trying hard not to drink anymore. I'm sorry for the trouble I've caused. My dad held my hand for the first time in a long time. I thought about the things that had changed since Dad stopped drinking. Daniel wasn't so nervous that Dad would yell at him, and Beth didn't argue all the time. We were doing family things again, and I was doing way better in school. I could study better when I didn't have to worry about helping Dad. It wasn't my problem to solve.
I feel like Reb Michelle and I made a commitment, I don't know, sometime before this pandemic, to begin telling stories with grit, to tell stories that really speak the truths of our lives. And I'm so grateful to her for sharing this story, even though I feel certainly it's a bit heart-wrenching to bear witness to for many of us and for me. So let's just take a deep breath as we enter into this sacred time of sharing the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, as we listen, you can place a hand over your heart to listen from this heart-centered place. And as I place stones into this bowl of water, I will read aloud the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. All are also invited to share your joys and your sorrows in the chat, that we may hear from the community gathered here. So I just want to give us a moment to sit with what are some of the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. A joy from Danette Johnson was sober another day. Amen. One day at a time, Danette. Lois Baum shares a joy. She celebrated her birthday this week with a hike, a vegan carrot cake Greg got her from Red Fern, and oh yes, her second Pfizer vaccine. Yay! A joy from Emma Berry, our office administrator, to have had her first in-person, all-vaccinated game night last night since the pandemic began. Looking forward to more as times go forward. Wishing you all some play and joy and game nights in your day. From Cheryl Junbar, a joy. She's finally starting to see some progress in her recovery from surgery a week and a half ago. Oh, Cheryl, so glad to hear it. It was quite a bit bigger than anticipated. A sorrow also from Cheryl. They're likely taking her dog, Callie, in tomorrow to be euthanized. Today she gets Tramadol all day and as many treats as she'll eat, wishing you all the hot dogs and dog treats and whatever in the world for Callie. Pet loss is so devastating. From Paula, my nephew Joe is visiting and we are having one fine time. Grateful for that, Paula. From Jacob Santos, and we'll be praying about this in a bit, but from Jacob Santos, deep sorrow, as yesterday marked the 5th anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting. Name it. And also a sorrow for the anti-Muslim attack in Ontario, Canada. Earlier this week, we are holding all of our Muslim siblings in our hearts and in our prayers, as this time is so difficult and has been for a while. From Lyle Jenks, holding Patricia, a Bristol friend and neighbor, in the light as she is in hospice care at home. Thinking of you, Lyle, and all who knew and loved Patricia. A joy from Johanna. I am so grateful for the love and compassion I am receiving from our beloved community in my time of great tragedy. Thank you. And thank you, Johanna, for continuing to show up here in the midst of the grief, the sorrow, all of it. I'm so grateful that this can be a community where we can show up still authentically. From Carla Freeman, a joy, a new job that allowed time for me to be here this morning. Welcome, Carla. So glad that you have a job that allows you to be here. From Dick Gilbert and Joyce Gilbert, I'm assuming our grandson Sam graduates from high school today. Congrats, Sam. Wow, is that happening already? Wow. Oh my goodness, a joy from Jamie Trossel, a joy that her stepfather had a few years of sobriety before dementia took him from us. Jamie, I'm so grateful for that as well. What a gift, what a gift. From Julie Kleinhans, a sorrow from my neighbor who was killed in a car accident Thursday. Oh, Julie, I'm so sorry. And a joy for being in Boston visiting friends this weekend. A sorrow from Jean Ott for families in Rochester coping with the effects of all the shootings. All of Rochester suffers when this happens. Amen, Jean. Holding all of our folks here in our community affected by all of the shootings and all of the violence that has been happening recently. I will drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all of the joys and the sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May all be held in the heart of love. Today, as we do each Sunday, I will light a white candle to hold that we are a community in the midst of a pandemic, to hold that we are a community that is still worshiping online and deeply affected by living through a pandemic, to hold that each one of us is living with grief, loss, fear, and hope. May this candle's flame hold our experiences around this horrific disease and hold all that is in our hearts at this time. And may its light be a beacon of hope and a reminder that we are not alone. Dear ones, we meet this morning, as Jacob Santos reminded us, one day after the 5-year anniversary of the mass shootings up in the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. Many have been sharing words and prayers during this anniversary, and I want to share a prayer with you all for the LGBTQIA2 Spirit Plus community, for our community. So will you pray with me? Spirit of life, source of our being, rooted earth to whom we return at the end of our days. We call into this space those ancestors who died on June 12th, 2016, those who came before, and those who have come after. We hold the wisdom of their lives close, the encouragement to live out as you are, the nourishment found in one's own community of belonging, a gay Latinx bar, the ways these folks lived and loved and laughed and cried, the hope and the promise of each and every one of their lives. Spirit, show us a way to honor these ancestors. Show us a path towards action. Open our eyes to the ways we are called to live in a time of too many mass shootings, in a time of ever-increasing racially motivated death, in a time when being out is celebrated and the cost for these ancestors was way too great. Help us to hold it all in these precious, tender, grieving hearts of our own. May we find space this day to tell someone we love them. May we find ways to disrupt violence and hate in our own circles of influence. May we do what we can to ensure that going to a gay bar need not be a death sentence. May we honor the dear loved ones here and in our lives whose hearts may be extra tender in this season. Spirit of life and love, show us a way. Show us a new way. Show us how to fully face this day, this anniversary, and allow the tears to come. Show us where our hearts connect with another and another and another and another. Let no one be left out. Let our love be ever expansive, holding the grief, the sorrow, the wisdom, and the joys present in this space this morning, recognizing that our ever expansive love is a queer love. May our hearts remain open to the ancestors, listening for what they have to teach us. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. Dear ones, as we enter into a time of silence, let us just hold in our hearts these ancestors. Let us take our minds back to where we were on June 12th, 2016. Let us take our minds back to what has happened over the last 5 years, and let us just join in some collective silence together as we remember and as we honor those we have lost. As we come back into this space from our shared silence, let us sing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life.
Spirit
Today's reading is an entry from This Day in Recovery, edited by Lane Campbell and Katie Kandarian Morris. This is a reading for March 8th. A quote from Barack Obama: "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or if we wait for some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek." As folks living with addiction, we know something has to change. Each day begins with a new resolve to give up this substance that has hold of our lives. And each day that we again pick up that substance brings another moment of disappointment. This is not something we can swear off. There are no magic words to get us to stop. To be able to stop, we have to experience a full life change. If we are honest with ourselves, we've been living a life where we want things to happen on our terms. We've tried to make those around us bend to our will. We've tried to force things. We have made resolutions, often without success, often to our great frustration, often to our detriment, to the point where life is too much to handle, and we are back in our addictions again. What needs to change is inside of us. We need to change in our foundations. Our perspective on life needs a drastic change, and we need help. If we could have brought about this change on our own, we would have done it already. We need help from others who've gone before us, and help from something greater than ourselves to get sober and stay sober. Question for the day: who can I ask to help me along this journey to recover?
Dear ones, I know in this space and in this community right now, we hold a lot of experience around addiction and recovery. I know this morning that for many of us, this story that was told that Rev Michelle shared with us is our story. I know that for many of us, we can identify with some of the different characters in the story, perhaps with one of the siblings, perhaps the wife, perhaps the father. I know that we here in this community have many different experiences around addiction. And I know that not every single one of our stories has ended up the way that this story did. I know that for many of us, our stories have been ones where people didn't get better, where folks didn't get well, where folks did never stop using, drinking. I just really want to hold that this morning. And I also want to hold the hope and the promise that Kitty sang to us about this morning, a hope that can be found in recovery, a hope that can be found by taking one step at a time, recognizing that not all is rosy and beautiful and good, that there are still tough times ahead and tough times for those of us who have chosen recovery. Dear ones, this morning, what I want you to know is that one of the major things about addiction is that it thrives in secret. It thrives in isolation. If you don't tell anyone, it still feels like your addiction might not be real. If it happens in solitude, when the family is asleep or when no one else is around, how can anyone know you have a problem? And yet in our story, this story is like my worst childhood nightmare come to life, to think about having a birthday party as a child where all of a sudden one secret is revealed. I have held in my heart during these past 15 months of social isolation all those who are living with addiction, all those who love someone living with addiction. This time has been deeply difficult for those in active addiction, as keeping secrets when everyone is staying at home can feel maybe just a bit easier, but also in all of this isolation, addiction has the chance to thrive. And those who are closest to us bear the brunt of so much. Good morning. My name is Lane, and I am an adult child. I am a compulsive overeater, and I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. I am a person in 12-step recovery. I am also a lifelong Unitarian Universalist who did not feel safe as a child talking with my friends at church or even my minister about the addiction in my family home. The truth is, living with addiction, active addiction, is never easy. The mental gymnastics are exhausting. The emotional gymnastics are exhausting. The way of living, with going back to one substance again and again after swearing it off, is heartbreaking. You develop ways to cope, ways of thinking about yourself that are unhealthy. Well, if only I could stop, everything would be okay. Well, if only they would stop, everything would be okay. Perhaps if I deny what's going on, everything will be okay. I must be to blame for all of the trouble I am causing my loved ones. I am a bad person because of this addiction. I am a bad person because someone I love lives with addiction. Shame. A deep shame harbored inside. I believe in universal love. A love that is open and accessible to all. I believe that those who are actively in addiction, who are using this very second on Sunday morning, are loved, have inherent worth and dignity, and deserve respect. If we believe in universal love, we believe no one is disposable, not one person. And if we truly believe this, no addict is disposable. No one with a drug problem is disposable. No one is outside the circle of love and care, no matter how far their disease has taken them. No one living with a loved one with active addiction is unworthy of love. This morning, I hope we can explore together one of the main antidotes to the isolation addiction thrives in: community. I hope we can take a look at what our community's role is in providing care for and welcoming those living with addiction, whether it is their own addiction or the addiction of someone they love. In my experience, living with addiction can be lonely. And it can even be lonely when you are in a room full of people. It is a deep internal aloneness when your mind is racing about when you will get that next fix in a room full of people. It is a deep internal aloneness to think you are the only one living with a loved one who is addicted, that no one else will understand or know. Community is essential to recovery from addiction. And community is essential just to those living with active addiction, to know you are welcome here, to know you are accepted. I reached out this past week to some folks I know in our church who are in recovery from addiction to ask them, how has Unitarian Universalism supported your recovery? It feels like an important question because I think we need to know, how can we support folks in moving from active addiction into recovery and support folks in the long run in addiction recovery? One common answer was support in finding a power greater than themselves, in seeking spiritual sustenance. One of the beautiful pieces of our shared faith is that the truth of who a higher power is, the nature of the relationship to a higher power, is always ever changing. The understanding shifts. And this has deeply aided those who have been in recovery for many years. And I think it's actually a deep asset that we bring to the recovery community, to be a place for spiritual exploration, to be a place where folks can explore and tell the truth of what they believe. Bill Elwell puts it this way: Alcoholics Anonymous' 12-step program is based on a Christian fundamentalist understanding of God, but allows for understanding a God of your choice. So motivated by the idea that I can't do a number of things on my own and that I can get by with a little help from my friends, I accepted AA's help. The I can do it my way wasn't working for me. John Kennedy's inauguration speech, "God's work must truly be my own," reflects my belief that the divine works through humans. The tolerance of Unitarian Universalism for religious diversity made it easier for me to focus on actions needed rather than getting hung up on the God word. Thank you, Bill. I want to just highlight here the spiritual maturity that Bill is pointing towards, the ability to grow in understanding of God, the ability to ask for help and find community, the ability to not get hung up on one word or one concept and miss the entirety of what recovery has to offer. The reality for so many that doing things our way is no longer working. How Unitarian Universalism can support folks in recovery and folks who are living with addiction is to rid ourselves of the concept of terminal uniqueness. This concept that everyone is having a different experience and a different and unique experience all of the time. Community is an essential tool for finding our common good, our common humanity. If addiction has ravaged your life, if you have been devastated by a loved one's drinking or drugging or workaholicism, you are absolutely not unique here. You are not alone. It is one of the saving messages of Unitarian Universalism. We are better together. You are not alone. And we are called to live by this belief, to answer this call with vulnerability and empathy, both giving and receiving the gift of connection in community. Recognizing your experience as my experience as yours. Kelly Scott shares, "When I stood at this pulpit on an Easter Sunday nearly 30 years ago, I was terrified and full of shame because I had the disease of alcoholism. I thought this congregation would reject me, that I would be shunned, that I would no longer be allowed to be a part of this church community. I was so very wrong." There are a couple of phrases that are said in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. "We will love you until you can love yourself." Some good universalist theology there. "And you don't have to go through this alone." This congregation did just that. They applauded and congratulated me. I got so many hugs that day after telling my truth. I felt loved. And when some of the people who were in the pews told me that they too were in recovery, I knew that I was not alone. After nearly 30 years, this congregation continues to love and support me in my recovery. The people in this church are forever on my gratitude list. Thank you, Kelly. I am grateful for you sharing this and grateful for nearly 30 years of sobriety. Wow! One day at a time. The other question I asked from some folks in our community is, what do you need from this church to talk openly about having an addiction and recovering from an addiction? As I said before, addictions thrive in secret. And if we are not a community that can welcome folks being able to talk about their experiences with addiction, whether it is your own or whether it is one, an addiction that a loved one is living with, I would hope that we are a place that welcomes all, no matter where they are on their journey with addiction. I know the churches often fall short of this mark, expecting folks to show up in a particular way, mainly to have one's stuff together and to keep a strong face on, to button up and to look good. But I would hope that our church does not encourage folks to keep addiction a secret. And I actually would hope that one of the gifts of this time period being in a pandemic is that you can come to church in your pajamas when you look tired, when you are struggling. This is a place where you can be. And I know that we will likely fall short of this mark. And we will likely make mistakes around saying the wrong thing or hanging on to judgments about addiction. We are all growing here. And my hope is that when we harbor that judgment, we take note of it and learn about learn from the experience and grow and change and shift. Here's what Ann Rhodey responded with to this, sort of question about what do you need from this church to talk openly about having an addiction and recovering from an addiction. She said, in Narcotics Anonymous, we are called upon to have the spiritual principles of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. I would say that this is what I most need from my church community. To understand that we can tolerate God talk that does not exactly represent our beliefs because our recovery means that much to us. I know many folks in our communities who have not pursued recovery because of their aversion to God language. So many Unitarian Universalists are atheists. I get it. And so many of us just have a really bad history with so much male language used for a higher power growing up. Perhaps one of the gifts of having so many folks in our church who are in recovery is the gift of knowing what works for me might not work for you, but we can still be in the same room together, and we can even heal together. Even though the language we may use may be different, and sometimes even some of our foundational theological principles may be different, we can still heal together. I grew up in an alcoholic home. It was the biggest secret of our family. Like the little girl in our story this morning, I had experiences of confusion, fear, anger, and worry, and I could have really used my church community being open-minded, honest, and willing enough to be a space that I could come to talk about my struggles at home. However, church was where my family went to look good, to be of service, to be active members, to sit on the board, to sing in the choir, to be in committees, to attend Sunday school, and we rarely asked for help. Perhaps some of you here can relate to this. We need church community to be a space where people can speak honestly with one another about their experience, whether they're in recovery, in addiction, or even in relapse and struggling with a relapse. We need church to be a space where we can all remain open-minded in the midst of one another's struggles, holding love for one another tenderly. And churches and communities fall short of this ask all the time. The cost is great. It means we miss out on the richness of experience, and we miss out on opportunities to reach for care that we need, or even for opportunities to offer care and understanding to others. Dear ones, may we find and offer welcome here to all living with addiction. May we seek our hearts and know our own stories around addiction and how it has affected our lives. May we release our feelings of terminal uniqueness and replace them with the reality of shared experience here in this community. And may we all embrace honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness as a whole community. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. Our final hymn is hymn number 1021, Lean on Me. So I'll invite you to remain muted and sing out joyfully from home, again creating a collective song from wherever we find ourselves in this moment.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. We all need somebody to lean on.
Dear ones, as I extinguish our flame here at First Universalist Church, and as you extinguish your chalice flames in your own homes, let us please read in unison our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. Dear ones, I'm going to invite you to just turn your view to gallery view right now so that we may be able to look upon one another's faces. And actually, before we enter into a time of moving forward from this service, I actually just want to take a moment, maybe your camera's off, if you'd like to turn it on, go ahead. But I just want to take a moment to really honor how many folks in our congregations have lives who have been touched by addiction. So if you would be willing to raise your hand, if you have a loved one who has gone through addiction, if you've struggled with addiction yourself, if you are someone who has lived with addiction, and I just want to give folks a moment to just scroll through and just take a look at how many of us truly this is. So many. So many of us. Dear ones, thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience here this morning. Thank you for coming here as your full self. Now let us take those hands and reach them out to the edge of our screen, connecting across our screens to one another, creating a circle, an unending, unbroken line, unbroken even in the midst of a pandemic. Dear ones, as you go forth into this week, my wish for you is to claim your experience and claim healing around addiction. My wish is for you to be rid of this idea of terminal uniqueness, to reach out for love and support, and to tenderly offer love and support to those you know who are struggling and who have been living with the effects of this disease. Dear ones, may we go forth into this week to create communities and places and spaces where it is safe for all to talk about some of these deep secrets. May they no longer bind us in shame. Please know this week that you are loved, and please go and be that love to whomever you meet. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. And as we enter into our time of postlude reflecting with one another, I just want to invite folks to put into the chat, after this service, I have been touched by addiction. Claim it, share it here. Let us not just see all the hands raised, but let us also claim it in the chat. As we reflect and enjoy the postlude, let us break bread together from our fabulous music director, Brock Chesfold.